Hey everyone, another 3 months have passed, so I figured it's a good time to check out what I added to the collection during the months of July, August, and September of 2022. I'm also going to open up the 3 boxes from Retro Game Treasure that I received during those months. If you don't know by now, Retro Game Treasure is a monthly subscription service that sends video games right to your door. As of right now, my preferences are mostly set to Nintendo cartridge-based games as well as GameCube games. I should point out that they are not a sponsor, they didn't send me anything for a review, they have no idea I'm making this video, and they have no input as to what I say. I'm just a regular subscriber to the service. So let's get started with the box from July 2022 and see what we got. First up, we have Ultima: The False Prophet for the Super Nintendo. This is a series that I know basically nothing about. I have heard of it before, and I have heard that the games can be rather expensive, but I have no idea what type of gameplay it is. The case and label look to be in pretty good shape, especially for the game's age. In the months leading up to this, I've had to trim down my preferences because they just weren't sending me Super Nintendo games. That's one of the systems I'm really hoping to get. Next up, for the Game Boy Advance, we have The Incredibles. I do know the Pixar franchise that the game is based off of, but it's not something that I watch very often. I know licensed games typically have a bad reputation, so hopefully this one doesn't fall into that category. Next, for the Game Boy Color, we have Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. Retro Game Treasure has sent me Pro Skater 2 in the past, so I guess for them, it just makes sense to fill out the franchise. It's probably not a version of the game I'm going to play very often, as the handheld Tony Hawk games don't play nearly as well as the home console versions, but I still am a fan of the franchise. And, to end the box, back to the Game Boy Advance, we have Defender: Saving the Human Race. The label and case for the game look to be in good shape. In fact, the entire box had games that looked like they were well taken care of in terms of condition. In order to test the games and record it using my capture card, I always used the Retron 5, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get Ultima: The False Prophet to work. I cleaned the pins the best I could, and I double checked other Super Nintendo games in the same slot, and they worked just fine, but there was nothing I could do to make it work, which is a massive shame. As for the other 3 games, they all worked perfectly fine. The Incredibles is a side-scrolling game and it plays surprisingly well. I didn't get too far into it, but it seems to have beat-em-up mechanics with pretty decent visuals. In fact, I'm pleasantly surprised by what I played for the testing. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, on the other hand, just isn't a very good version of the game. I feel like they barely advanced at all from Tony Hawk 2. It's a version of the game I'm probably never going to pick up again. And finally, we have Defender. While the gameplay isn't that great, it does have multiple versions of the game on the cartridge, so you can play with different visual styles, which is pretty nice. But again, this is just going into my collection and probably won't be something I pick up to casually play. It's a shame that the game that I was most interested in turned out to not work. If anyone knows any DIY tips I can try, please let me know down below. The other aspect of it that really sucks is that with the cartridge being valued at $20.41 Canadian or $15 US, it's the most expensive game in the box. Just so you know, even though I received the box in July, all the prices shown in the video will be as of September 28, 2022. I also took apart all the games to make sure they're all legitimate copies, and I didn't find anything wrong with any of them. As for The Incredibles on the Game Boy Advance, it currently goes for $6.52 Canadian or $4.79 American. Third, we have Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, which is valued at $4.69 Canadian or $3.45 American. And finally, we have Defender, which currently goes for $11.63 Canadian or $8.55 American. Moving on to the box for August 2022, my preferences didn't change throughout the course of the 3 months, but my wish list is something that I'm regularly updating. I have noticed that as I make my profile more and more specific, the likeliness of them sending me something off my wish list gets a lot higher. First off though, we have a Super Mario toy. I did specify in my preferences on the website that I am okay with toys as long as they're officially licensed, and I do see a Nintendo seal on the label. But if you don't want to get items like this, then make sure to check all the areas on the website and fill out your preferences accordingly. Next, we have Super Mario Bros. 2 for the original Nintendo. This is fantastic in my mind. It's a game that was on my wish list, and it's a first-party Nintendo game, which is basically exactly what I'm looking to collect. It also looks to be in excellent condition. Somehow, in my journey of collecting games, this actually passed me by, but not anymore. Third, we have Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. I'm of two minds about this game. I'm kind of tired of getting Tony Hawk handheld games, but at least they're running out of them to send to me. It's also kind of nice to now have all Tony Hawk 1 to 4 handheld games in my collection. Hopefully though, with it being a Game Boy Advance game, it'll actually play better than the previous ones. And finally, we have Asteroids for the Game Boy Color. The game and label look to be in pretty nice condition. I know to some retro fans, Asteroids is a key part of their childhood, but personally, I didn't play it much growing up. But it is a classic game that I don't have a lot of ways to play otherwise, so it is good to have. But before we test the games, let's see what's inside this little Kinder Surprise type toy. And it's a little standee of Princess Peach and Toad. Honestly, it's probably not worth a lot and I probably would have rather gotten another game instead, but it'll fit in nicely in front of my TV with my lineup of toys that I have going. As for testing the games, this time I had no issues. In case anyone is wondering, even with the handheld games, I'm using the wireless SM30 controller from 8BitDo. Basically, it's a wireless Super Nintendo controller. Testing everything, they all played great. Super Mario Bros. 2 is just how I remembered it. I have countless ways of playing the game, from Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo to the Switch Online service, but the one way I was missing was the original cartridge, so it is nice to have it this way. Tony Hawk 4 on the Game Boy Advance is a much better game than Tony Hawk 3. The switch from Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advance did wonders for the game. It actually does have a similar feel to the console versions of the game. While nowhere near as smooth as those ones, it at least feels like a playable handheld version. And finally, Asteroids for the Game Boy Color surprisingly isn't terrible. It's not fantastic by any means, but honestly, my expectations were pretty low and it looks much nicer than I thought it would and it plays a lot better than I expected as well. Taking the games apart, everything looks good to me, and checking the values on pricecharting.com, Super Mario Bros. 2 currently goes for $27.20 Canadian or $19.99 American. Tony Hawk 4 on the Game Boy Advance currently goes for $10.86 Canadian or $7.98 American. And finally, Asteroids on the Game Boy Color is valued at $6.80 Canadian or $5 even American. Moving on to the final box for the video, we have the box for September 2022. Every once in a while, the bubble wrap they use is completely deflated and you can actually hear the games rattling inside the box. And that's actually always a worrying feeling whenever that happens. But with that out of the way, for the original Nintendo, we have Burger Time. This is a game I didn't play much growing up, but whenever I did try it in arcades and such in the past 15 years, I really enjoyed it. I don't believe it was on my wish list, and if it wasn't, it probably should have been. The case does look a little dirty, but it looks like it should clean off fairly easily. There is some dirt on the label as well, but the majority of it is actually on the case itself. Honestly, I wish they would just clean that off before sending the game. Next, we have Army Men Sarge's Heroes 2 on the Game Boy Color. The front of the cartridge and the label look great, but someone wrote the name Ward on the back in Sharpie, so again, that's just something I'll have to clean off. And finally, we have, for the Game Boy Advance, Motocross Maniacs Advance. Honestly, I'm not big on motocross or racing in real life or in games. I understand the appeal and usually can get some fun out of these type of games, but they're never really my go-to genre. Giving the games a test, Burger Time worked great and it turned on the first try. As for the gameplay, it's not as smooth as I would have liked. Unlike other versions of the game, it's way too easy to miss a step on the ladder by one step or something and just get caught trying to readjust. The game plays fine and how it should in terms of design and looks, but this version is just too frustrating being off by a pixel or two and you just stand there instead of climbing and then you get caught. Army Men Sarge's Heroes 2 has two completely different looks. The cutscenes, even though they're basically still images, look great considering the platform the game was made for, but the gameplay itself looks terrible. Luckily, the gameplay doesn't feel as bad as it looks, but it's still not a good game, nowhere near as fun as the 64 version that I was hoping to get. And finally, Motocross Maniacs Advance is actually the most fun game out of the box. Fun level designs considering it's a side-scrolling game, bright colors, and smooth gameplay makes this a fairly decent game actually. Again, I'm not big on racing games, but all the racing games that I do enjoy are crazy and fun like this. The less realistic the racing, the more I tend to enjoy it. So in terms of motocross games, this is, in a sense, right up my alley. After taking the games apart, they all look legitimate to me. Burger Time for the NES currently goes for 18.25 Canadian or 13.41 American. Army Men Sarge's Heroes 2 is priced at 10.19 Canadian or 7.49 American, and Motocross Maniacs Advance is valued at 21.37 Canadian or 15.71 American. And while that does it for the 3 months from Retro Game Treasure, we still have all my regular pickups to go through for July, August, and September. So let's start off with the PS2. We have 007 Everything or Nothing, 007 Agent Under Fire, and Soul Calibur 2. All three games are complete copies with manuals, and all three are also the greatest hits versions of the games. Here we can see Soul Calibur 2 working and playing just fine. Honestly, I'm not great at fighting games, so don't judge me too hard. Also, there's going to be a good amount of footage that is captured by just filming my TV. Hopefully, the footage isn't too bad. If you know of a good way to capture footage from composite cables, then please let me know down below, or at least any tips to keep the TV from looking so blue in the footage. Any help would be appreciated. Sticking with the PS2, we have the greatest hits version of Ratchet & Clank, as well as Crash Nitro Kart and Rayman Raving Rabbids. The Crash game is complete with the manual, but the other two are missing the manuals, which is a shame. Here we can see Ratchet & Clank playing, and this is a great game and a great franchise. There's a lot of Ratchet games, and while I've played a good chunk of them, this is one that passed me by. I did play the PS4 version, and I had a great time doing it, but it's nice to have the original. Moving on to the PS3, we have Borderlands, Street Fighter 4, Need for Speed Carbon, and Lego Batman the video game, and all are complete with manuals. Need for Speed is the greatest hits version of the game as well. Here we can see Borderlands playing just fine. This is actually a franchise that has basically passed me by. I actually haven't put a lot of time into the Borderlands franchise. I've played most of them, but I've never beat any of them. Maybe this is a good time to work my way through this series, starting at the beginning. Next, for the original Xbox, we have MechAssault 2 Lone Wolf and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six 3, as well as Devil May Cry 4 and BioShock Infinite, both for the Xbox 360. All four games are complete with manuals. Honestly, I had very good luck with finding complete games this time around. Usually, my luck isn't nearly this good, but for whatever reason, people were donating complete games, and I'm happy to add them to the collection. Here we can see MechAssault 2 playing, and it plays pretty smooth. I was having a relatively good time playing this game while testing it to make sure it worked. I also played it using the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, so I'm sure that helped a little bit, but at its core, it seems like a fun time. Moving on to some newer generation Xbox games, we have Star Wars Battlefront for the Xbox One, as well as LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga and Pac-Man World Repack for the Series X. And both of these games were actually bought brand new at GameStop. I actually haven't owned my Series X for very long, and because of Game Pass, these are the very first Series X games I've purchased physically. Here we can see Pac-Man playing, and it works great. The game seems like a fairly simple platformer, mostly side-scrolling, but there is some depth to the levels as well. I got the games basically a week ago, so I'm not very far into either one yet. Switching companies, moving on to the Nintendo Wii, we have Chaotic Shadow Warriors, Ark Rise Fantasia, and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Chaotic Shadow Warriors is missing the manual, but the other two are complete. Here we can see Ark Rise Fantasia playing, and this is something you might have seen in one of my other videos, as this game is rather expensive. It's always a thrill when you find a game for so cheap that is worth way more than you paid for it. While it doesn't happen very often, it's always a pleasant surprise when you find out its actual value. Sticking with Nintendo, we have Wave Race Blue Storm and Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube, and Splatoon 3 for the Nintendo Switch. GameCube games are something I basically never see in thrift stores, and I've been looking for some recently, so I actually found these complete but still used copies on Amazon, and Splatoon 3 was bought brand new considering it released roughly 3 weeks ago. I haven't put too much time into Splatoon 3 yet, and I did pick Team Grub for the Splatfest, but I only played maybe 3 games during it. I just didn't have a ton of time to play it during the event. The game is great though. I do understand the complaints that it still just feels like Splatoon, but honestly, I'm okay with that. And the final game pickups I got are ones I wanted to save until the very end, as they're really interesting to me. I found 8 original Xbox demo discs from Xbox Magazine. Starting with the first 4, we have disc number 23, 25, 26, and 32. Each one of the discs contains multiple game demos and different features, including trailers. I think they're super interesting, even though they aren't full games. From disc 23, we can see a demo for Dino Crisis 3 playing. It's a shame I can't play these through backwards compatibility, because I would love to record this through an HDMI cable for you, but they're not supported by my 360, Xbox One, or Series X. I also picked up the demo disc for issues number 36, 37, 43, and 45, with number 45 having 17 playable demos on the disc, which would have been a fantastic way to test out games before buying them way back in the day. Here we can see the demo for Def Jam Fight for New York playing, and while the demo was short, I started it and ended it in under 10 minutes, you still got a good feel for the game and it showcased the cutscenes and combat. It really did its job for giving a quick preview for the game while making you want to play the next fight. I also managed to pick up 2 consoles during this time. First off, at a flea market, my friend got me a Sega Genesis Model 2. Now, the issue is there's no cords for it, so I have no idea if it works. I do have a retro game store pretty close by to me, so I'll be sure to check them out and see if they have any cords for me to pick up. Otherwise, I'll probably order third-party cords off of Amazon. That's what I did for my original Xbox, and they work perfectly fine. I also found an Atari Flashback console. I believe this is version number 6, and it plays fairly well. If I'm going to play classic arcade games, I'm much more likely to use this instead of some of the Game Boy games sent to me by Retro Game Treasure. Again, those are nice to have in the collection, but a flashback console just plays a lot smoother and it's more enjoyable. And there we have it, all the gaming related pickups I got during the months of July, August, and September of 2022. If you want to check out what else I've picked up in months past, then be sure to check out this video right here.